African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development Center has stepped up its campaign against gender-based violence and inequality with the level of a novel report on the problem focused on Nigeria's extractive sector. The national report, done in collaboration with Nigeria's Data Bureau (NBS) under its Build grant by Ford Foundation, was launched at a one-day high-level national masculinity conference, which had in attendance powerful representatives of Nigeria's academia, government and politics security agencies, mining host communities, and key stakeholders in the extractive sector.
People and for the benefit of humanity. Here we go. Now, yes, program copy, I will show it to the audience. Yes. To the glory of God. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone.
The conference featured panel discussions and deliberations on the findings of reports among experts who propose implementation strategies and other ways to solve the problem of gender abuse and inequality, particularly in the male-dominated sector. Mr. Monday Osas, the executive director of Center LSD, highlighted the importance of the conference to raising awareness on the findings of the report and provoking a national conversation among relevant stakeholders on practical steps to promoting the inclusion of women in key sectors and protecting them from gender-based violence.
Today's event, the masculinity workshop, has come out very powerful, and the whole essence is to see how we can resolve gender-based violence that happens in the extractive sector. And I'm glad with the turnout, I'm glad with the commitments that have been made, and some stakeholders have committed to taking the advocacy forward so that we can have clear laws, clear policies, rules and regulations, even at the community level, that can help to deal with this challenge. And I think that I'm happy. The other thing that I'm happy about is the turnout. You know, there is one thing to invite people. There's another thing for the people to honor your invitation. And I want to thank all the stakeholders that are here for believing in Center LSD. We don't just call conferences. We call it because we think that these are things that resonate with humanity. It's a challenge that resonates, and we think that by the time we come together, it is then we can be able to profile solutions to dealing with it. And I'm happy with the commitments that have been made in terms of strategies that we're going to take going forward to deal with this challenge of gender-based violence in the extractive sector. My message is for all and sundry to come together to ensure that whatever that is plaguing the Nigerian society will come together as a collective to jointly reflect and formulate strategies of dealing with them so that our Nigeria will be a country that we can always be proud of at all times. And I think by the time we do that, Nigeria will be a great country.
One of the invited guests, Professor Julius Iyonvere, a representative member and chairman of the House of Committee on Basic Education, praised the report as an important first step towards reforming social cultural institutions and the norm that perpetuates abuse against women and prevent their entry into certain sectors where their contributions would aid national growth and development.
This kind of discussion, therefore, this research is a very good starting point to exposing how this happens, who or what are those agencies that are involved in reproducing the processes, and then what are the solutions to sorting them out. We can stand here and recount 1,000 ways in which not just masculinity, but even violent and oppressive masculinity, what some call toxic masculinity, is bred and recycled and made to look natural. You know, your daughter says, I want to be a pilot. You say, oh, you can't be a pilot. It's a man's job. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a soldier. Whatever it is. Even our political parties. You say the forms are free, or you pay half. But you put the meeting at 11 p.m. for a start. In a place within security, you expect her to drive from her village down to the village where you are. There are so many ways in which we give and we take. And those are areas we need to be identifying and strategizing on how to eliminate in our system.
While speaking to Bloomshare Nigeria, the program director, Mrs. Victoria Udo, and the executive director of Caring Heart Initiative, Mrs. Grace Ibakina, urged continuous conversations and awareness on gender-based violence and other deterring factors that limit the participation of women in society. They encourage women to persist in raising their expectations and break new grounds in leadership and other areas of life. Mrs. Victoria Udo expressed particular excitement at the turnout of the event, adding that the report, being a first of its kind, is aimed at both improving the experience of women in the male-dominated executive sector and increasing their participation.
I can say it's been worth it. The turnout was really encouraging. At the beginning of this conference, we planned for 80, and by the time we had confirmation, we had confirmed 100. As at few minutes ago, we have confirmed about 110. We want to thank God for the turnouts. We want to thank God for the speakers we have. We have speakers from different sectors. We have academia. We have professors from school. The attendance is about 30, 40 professors in the house and researchers who have carried out different research over the years. This conference is doubling up as a launch of a research, which is a national research. When we started the Build Fund, Build Grant, there were different researches with the MBS on gender, but there was none on gender-based violence in the extractive sector. So we thought of not just going ahead as civil society to do that research, but also to work with the government. So that's where the demand and the supply came in. So we, together with MBS, carried out the research. And again, we are here launching it with MBS. The reason being that we want the ownership to be domiciled with MBS, so they can own it as a national document. Anyone who wants to get data on that sector, on that issue, can always go to them, go to anyone, and such that anyone also who wants to expand this research to a national research, such that it carries, it's looked at data from the 36 states, can build on what we already have instead of repeating the process. And so we thank God for the panelists. It's two sections for today's conference. We had the morning section that is looking basically on the research, and after the research we're going to be having panel people discussing the research, and then the climax of the conference is the presentation on the role of women in national development, particularly in the extractive sector. We've heard that the extractive sector is not a sector for women. Some people have said women should look for teaching job or look for nursing job because they think the extractive sector is a tedious one and women should not be found there. But we are saying if women say they can do it, why not? Until the women say they can't, let's give them the opportunity. Let's give them equal opportunity and equal platform to also do what their male counterparts are doing.
This conference is really impactful because this is first of its kind, bringing the attention of this country and making of documentations for gender-based violence in the extractive sector, knowing fully well that from time immemorial there have been this seclusion of women because we believe that women are not being captured in the extractive measure. Now, one key thing about this program is the end part of this research and the recommendations that is being brought in. A lot have been said about the advocacy, more awareness, and some of the recommendations that have been coming, especially that from me, is to show the social, psychoeconomic support that will be given to the victims and the survivors of gender-based violence in the extractive sectors. My message to everyone home and abroad is that extractive sector, just like every other facet of work, is for all that are enabled to carry it out. That the fact that women, due to maybe domestic pressures, have found themselves in the menial job in the extractive sector does not mean that they cannot actually do what the men are doing. And when their capacity can carry, they should not be stopped, they should not be hindered. And the opportunity that maybe they are being helped to live have a livelihood, they should not be used as an opportunity to begin to violate them, knowing fully well that as human they have psychological depression, which could actually cut them. And if given the opportunity, truth be told, there will be a better livelihood in our society.
Others who spoke to Bloomshire News crew, including the Director of Socials and Gender Department, Mr. Tunde Adebisi, and Media Practitioner, Mrs. Haruna Jubril, harped on the need to pass needed legislation to tackle discrimination and deliver swift justice to victims and survivors of all forms of gender-based violence.
So the question is that there should be a law that will streamline all the minor activities in Nigeria, either artisanal or major one, so that we know what they are doing and we know the output from there and we know where it's going, so that we can value it and put it to the national GDP calculations. So surely, but what is important now is that you can see from one of the recommendations, this is just 6 states. And I'm very sure for those of you who are here, it's not only 6 states we have mining. If not all the 36 states, at least we have majority, particularly in the northern. So, but as a start, and you can see we call it baseline. You know, when you call something baseline, is that not that they have not done anything before, but baseline is that it's in Nana, you can see how intensive the research is. They have been doing something before, but not to this level. So what I recommend is that, well, we have started with 6 states. We should muscle more fund to go more where they are, so that we can get more results from what we have done.
Gender balance in itself is what Nigerian government needs to actually look into, because where women are not allowed to strive, for instance, household income suffers. Women are great planners, because when you look at the men in power today, they were raised by women. And if they were raised by women, women have raised presidents, women have raised governors, they've raised ministers. It's very important for women to be given a lot of chance, either in appointive position, in elective position as well. And in the extractive industry, for instance, we still have women. The participation of women is still low, because that sector is not properly streamlined, because it's a sector that will earn so much for Nigeria. As we speak today, there are people from Liberia, Sierra Leone, and majorly the Chinese people that are dominating that sector. And you find out that government is not actually making the amounts of money that it's supposed to make from that sector. So that sector needs to really be streamlined. The policy framework of that sector needs to be very well articulated.
Also speaking was Mr. Mamodu Abubakar, the Director of Space for Change, and Mrs. Victoria Ibezi Hoire. They commended Center LSD for embarking on the research and authoring the report, adding that it would raise awareness on the problem and initiate useful course discourse that will strengthen the country's government and legal framework towards addressing the issue.
Today's one is welcome in the sense that, because it's really long overdue. Women have been long relegated, not just in the Chinese industry, but generally. I think it's a time and a moment to discuss it. My message to Central LSD is to keep up the good work. They've come far in this, and I think if there's anybody that can promote this, is Central LSD. Kudos to them.
Very revealing research about the forms and prevalence of violence in extractive communities. Many of us, we've always known that violence go on. A lot of violence occurs in extractive communities, but we do not know the prevalence. We do not know the states that have the highest frequencies. We do not know the patterns of violence that are manifesting in those communities. So we're here to learn more from this research about where it is happening, the kind of things that are happening, and the kind of interventions that are needed to mitigate or eliminate them completely. Women, from what you've heard, women need to now get closer to the table where laws are being made, decisions are being made. It's no longer enough for women to be victims. So women have been victims for too long. So the essence of the conversation we're having today is to transform the role of women from victim to decision makers, to change makers.
The event also featured a discussion on the role of women in international development, with speakers addressing the need to eliminate exclusion stereotypes that poses barriers to the inclusion of women in male-dominated sectors where their participation could increase productivity and raise the sector's economic contributions to the country.